right. So we are live. We've got our five committee members, and we have it looks like a couple of attendees in the audience who are joining us. As folks start to join, let's do a quick roll call, confirm that we have quorum, and then we can call this meeting to order. Krishna Kumar,
Present.
Howard Kurtzman,
Present.
Karen Gall,
Present.
David Martin,
Present.
Ian Hawksworth is not here. Frank Chauvin is joining us late, so we will add him to the attendees when he joins us. I am here, so with 5 of 8, we have quorum, and I will call our committee meeting together at 7:04 p.m. Let's get started with a couple of old business items. For those of you in the audience, and there's only 4, so small group tonight. This is kind of a bit of a reset. We've had a kind of a hard pounding agenda since the start of the year, with a number of different meetings and conversations focused on the Neighborhood Management Authority and then the Business Improvement District. We've had a number of discussions, presentations around the developments that are underway through the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. 3 in particular that we heard on in May, and then a couple of very robust conversations about the resolution we wanted to pass and communicate to DemPed. I thought we did some great work both during the meeting and then also immediately following the meeting. That resolution was put forward to the commission at our September 4th meeting. It was passed, and I will be circulating that around to folks. There was one item that needed an edit before signature because we made a minor tweak to it, and it got hung up in the box signature system. So I'll be sending that around to folks and then transmitting that to DemPed tomorrow. So good work by this group, and I'm very proud of the collaboration. I'm also really proud of the debates. I think we had a chance to really kind of color all the way to the corners on a bunch of these different topics, and that's important to do to make sure that we get it right and that we are championing for the community as these important development initiatives roll forward. So I'll be scheduling a follow-up phone call with Daniel Lyons and other members of DemPed after I transmit the letter tomorrow, and we'll let you know. And then I'm hoping that we can then pin down some dates for some kind of working sessions with DemPed, per the resolution where we ask them to actively partner with this committee to formulate an engagement strategy, engagement plan around 1617 U Street, 1620 V Street. So that's my quick update on the on old business related to that particular item. I'm going to kind of put the question to the committee here and just say, are there any other old business items that are in your mind that we want to make sure we don't lose sight of, or are there any old business items that you might actually have an update on that you want to share? And I see Krishna's hand up first, so we'll turn to you.
I think I just have 2 quick questions. Number 1 is, I'm just going to flag this. I don't think there's any updates. Reeves Center. I think when we had last talked to DemPed on that, it was around September, where they thought they might have some better idea on the budget going forward. And I think we could loop back into them in the next month or 2 and try to get an update. I'm continue to be concerned about the status of the Reeves Center. So I'll just flag that. Number 2, and Matt, you and I have been emailing about this. The Main Streets person, I sort of have lost track of the emails on that, so I'm a little confused on is there a meeting coming up, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so that was going to be definitely one of my updates. So let's maybe start with Reeves Center. Krishna, I recall the same thing where the woman from DemPed who came and presented to us thought that they would have a revised proposal to bring forward to the community and the council sometime in September. And so they were kind of on my mind as well. I will reach out to her after this meeting. For better or worse, you get copied on all these outreach emails, but I will reach out to her and see if they are at a point where it is worth having them come back and give us an update presentation in October, because I would like to kind of hear where we're at, bigger picture, and you know this probably better than me, but tracking a lot of these bigger developments, we're seeing an increased number of developers who have been granted approval to move their, zoning approval and other approvals, requesting 2-year extensions, and citing an unfavorable economic environment. And so I suspect that we're going to see a big slowdown in development for the next couple of years as interest rates remain high, tariff impacts hit building supplies, and then the general kind of uncertainty around employment and economic stability in the DC area. So I think we should definitely get an update from them, and hear where we're at. But I'm also kind of in the back of my mind asking the question, and maybe I put it out to this group too. I'm asking the question, what do we need to be thinking about in ANC 1B if we're seeing, big slowdown in development across the board?
Yeah, let me just make a point on that with follow-up, which is, um, you know, I was walking down U Street, I think it's between 13th and 14th, and the amount of vacant space there is absolutely staggering. I mean, it's more than 50%, I would say, is empty or trying to be leased. I mean, we're having a problem. In some ways, you know, I think I see Jean is in the audience. She has made this point before. Things are too expensive. Price will come down and will solve itself. And I, to a degree, agree with that. But I think it's something we should always be thinking about and talking about when we get a chance.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any, before we go to the main streets and the DSLB conversation, do you have any thoughts, not about solutions, but the kind of conversation we should be having there? And Gene Hamza, raise your hand if you've got thoughts that you want to weigh in with. Because Krishna, I'm with you, right? I mean, I've said this a couple of times that we're in a city that is developing simultaneously in a lot of different areas. So you've got the whole Navy Yard coming online, and the Union Market area coming online, and the wharf coming online, and there's lots and lots of development in lots of different places. And it feels like the development is happening faster than we can fill it. And I certainly don't. This is home for all of us. I certainly don't want U Street to be left behind. And so if there are things that we can be thinking about, or if there are folks that we can be engaging, or if there are conversations we can be facilitating, I'd love to do that.
Well, let me just jump in there, because one thing that I did, and this was before you were chair, so this was probably a year and a half ago, is I had actually talked to a number of the commercial real estate developers on up along U Street. I think it was really JBG, Shea Bernstein, and I forget who was the former owner of the 13th and U building. In any case, just trying to get some sense on what they were thinking in terms of the business conditions.
Yeah.
I think, to me, I'm just looking at my notes here. One thing they talked about was street traffic numbers. Looking at one metric that the real estate guys really look at. We don't necessarily look at a lot. The second is, we don't have national retailers coming into our side of U Street. Some have come into 14th Street, but they have not been brave enough really to try this. Constant talk on the number of cannabis stores up and down U Street that has changed, and a lot of the vacancies that I was referring to are actually former smoke shops that Abra has now sort of put out of business, but it's still a continuing thing. And talking about the rent, I think that is a real issue. And then the other thing I think, which is interesting, is just a lot of these places are not well suited for actual restaurant use. They're older buildings. They don't have the kitchen and exhausts that and infrastructure to necessarily support the best restaurant use. You know, the the conversation about that was about the former Starbucks that was on 13th by the pizza place. And I
Right.
don't think either of them had the proper exhaust system, so they couldn't really put a restaurant into that space. They had to sort of put the pizza place and Starbucks in, and Starbucks has now moved. We have Emmy's, which is a great little place, but again, they don't seem to really have a kitchen where they're cooking stuff in there. So there's solutions, but I think thinking about these sorts of practicalities could be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think it needs to be a conversation. So let's maybe get together offline, think about who we want to invite to an upcoming meeting, and who we want to reach out to, just outside of the meeting to get some additional insight. But yeah, I'm a little worried about our U Street business corridor right now, and it's not just all the other things that I mentioned before that are economic. U Street has also been particularly hard hit in the month of August and September with the increased federal policing presence, and I know that drove a lot of foot traffic and a lot of potential customers way, and had an impact on the local hyper local economy. Okay, so a follow-up item there. The other item, Krishna, that you raised that I was going to give an update on. When we met with the business leaders to talk about the business improvement district, one of the questions that folks asked was, what are the resources that are already or should already be available to us? What types of programs are out there? We talked a bit about the clean teams and the Main Street programs. This group, Karen, I know you had raised some questions and concerns. This group raised some questions about how the Main Street programs and the Clean Team programs were performing, what impact they were making, and how the businesses could lean on them or should be able to lean on them. I did speak with Brian Dornbush. There had been some rumors circulating, and my understanding is that the rumors had come from a meeting with the 1E Economic Development Committee, that District Bridges was not going to pursue the U Street Main Street or the lower Georgia Avenue Main Street again. And I spoke with her about that at Art All Night, and she clarified that they are 100% planning to renew their scope with those two main streets. So they are planning to continue to operate the U Street Main Street and the lower Georgia Avenue Main Street. I will note, and I did not raise this to her, I wanted to have a follow-up conversation, not at Art All Night, but I will note that we've not had a U Street Main Street executive director now for quite some time. And I think that is to the detriment of our U Street Main Street area and the detriment of our businesses. But what I would like to do, and I want to put it to this committee for your thoughts, is to invite Alex Padro, who represents Shaw Main Streets, and whose Main Streets program covers the eastern half of U Street. Brian Dornbush, whose District Bridges U Street Main Street covers the western half, and then also the associated Clean Team program managers who are responsible for U Street, so that we can have them talk about what their plans are for the coming 12 months. The new contracts start along with the fiscal year for the district on October 1st. And I would like to essentially do three things. The first is to have them talk a bit about what their plans are. I would like for the community to be able to give some feedback on perhaps what they would like to have seen and have not seen. And then I would like to talk more actively about, how we'll work together in the year ahead. But I'd love the committee's thought on whether that is a worthwhile conversation to schedule in October at our October committee meeting, and invite those executives or those leaders to come and present.
Yeah, Matt, I do think that's an excellent idea. I would also suggest inviting some successful business owners on U Street, because there are some, and some who have survived through the pandemic and crime and parking issues, all sorts of things. So rather than hear just the people who are having problems, how are people who are successful managing? What's their secret to success? And we might be able to learn from them. So.
No, I think that's excellent. Good. Let's do both of those things. We'll get the folks to come and present. We'll also invite a couple of the businesses who are succeeding, and we'll reach out to the business roundtable folks and ask, who would be interested in coming and sharing their stories. Karen, I see your hand up.
Yes, and I've requested this several times, so I know this is not new to our committee. I would like to see from these two programs that you mentioned their annual reports as to what they have done, because they're supposed to put their reports online under the DC Small Business and Licensing um, District website, and they're not on there. And the reason why we need to see that is because we know that we have our data that we see firsthand. However, I really want to see what their programming is saying from their particular perspective, what they're reporting to the district government as to how they're performing, because it's been inadequate, as we mentioned, and as Howard mentioned, it's nice to see the success stories. I think that we need to hear from people like Ben Shilibo, who has been through so many different trials and errors of the U Street district, and other businesses who have been successful, who's worked with community, who's done the pivots when it's necessary, to see what it is that they're doing, to also just give some great insights to people who are potential business owners to fill in those spaces that were mentioned, that drive business towards DC. I looked at DIMPEDS. I get their newsletter quite regularly, and they're reporting that they're interested in. They talked about they did not bring up U Street in regards to but they're saying that DC is open for business, and open for business means bringing in like beauty salons. I I reached out to a very profitable beauty salon that I know, to tell them, hey, why don't you come over this way, because they're opening places in Waldorf and Baltimore and New York and all other places. And I tell them, I said, we have a lot of vacant openings right along U Street that will be great for your business. However, they consistently talk about the pricing and a number of things that was mentioned earlier. What can we do to let them feel comfortable? So I think that those are things that I want to hear, and I also want to see us present to them, to market to these business owners, to let them say, okay, when we're listen to the successful businesses, that we can say, hey, guess what? This business is surviving, and these are the tips that they're offering to be a successful business owner. Thank you very much.
Yep, great points, Karen. I think the first one you mentioned, I don't want to get lost, and that is asking both of the Main Street programs and the Clean Team to come and essentially bring their report, so that they're able to have a structure to report out what they've done, increase transparency, and it's a good jumping off point for the conversation. They need to and can play a really important role in the corridor. And I think it's time for us to engage them in that kind of conversation, as well as, I think you're kind of a mini DEMPED yourself of U Street reaching out to other businesses. But you're right. I mean, I think that's it's a heavy lift, but it's I think the kinds of conversations that we need to be looking for those opportunities. Okay. So I will invite those folks to the next meeting. Other old business items, just to kind of keep people caught up. The Business Improvement District work continues. It has slowed down just a bit. I do not know exactly why it has slowed down just a bit, but I suspect that the kind of chaos that was created along U Street and for local businesses from August 10th or 11th to September 11th was a reason that kind of the bid leadership wanted to let the businesses stay focused on just doing what they needed to do. So we've not had really an interaction since their last presentation in August. And I have reached back out to them and will keep this group updated. I was hoping originally to have them come and present an update tonight, but we'll be looking at having them come back again before the end of the year, either October or November, based upon the pace of their engagement with various businesses and property owners in the proposed bid area. Any other old business items that we want to just kind of get caught up on and make sure that they don't fall off of our radar before we kind of pivot to comp plan and thinking about where we want to go with comp plan in the year ahead?
I'm curious. Have you looked at what we did the last term? We had drew up an action plan as a committee that we wanted to use to move forward, and I was just wondering. I mean, I know that's part of the archives of the commission, but have you used that as part of some of the planning that we would do this year? Because we were really, really comprehensive in that particular action plan. And I wanted to see if you could bring that up and we could look at it to see if there's any of the items that you're speaking of that's still on there so that we did not, just in case we don't overlook anything.
Yeah, no, Karen, that's a good point. I don't have it right in front of me, so I will see if I can, while we're talking, pull it up easily without losing my train of thought. If somebody else has it, they should feel free to pull it up in real time. Yeah, the committee did an excellent job of using the December meeting to document the items that had been a real priority for the team over the last, or the committee over the last couple of years. And so you all essentially handed that off to this year's committee with a tremendous amount of detail and very well organized. I did actually sit down with our committee chair from last year for a transition meeting. He and I sat down sometime in January and got kind of his thoughts on that. I'd also had a quick conversation with Krishna sometime as we were transitioning and setting up the structure for this year. But Karen, to be perfectly candid, I know I have not looked at it in the last 3 months. And so I think it's a good idea to go back to that document and just say, what are the other items that we need to make sure we're not losing sight of? I think we have been staying pretty true to the roadmap that was laid out, with slightly different prioritization, just because of the timing of different deadlines that were hitting us. But I think we're consistent, but I also think that there's a couple of things that we haven't yet turned our attention to, and it would be worthwhile using that to remind us. So what I'll do is pull that and send it around to the committee members after the call so that everyone can look at that, and maybe there's a quick straw poll of what are some of those items that we haven't gotten to that raised to the level of let's make sure we kind of get these things restarted again before the end of the calendar year. Good point. Okay. So let's do this. I think now is a good time, and in terms of now, I mean, in the course of the year, and frankly, in the course of the roughly 3 to 4 year cycle that the Office of Planning is on for the rewriting of the comp plan. This is a pretty good time for us to pivot our attention to the comp plan rewrite for 2050, and to kind of think a little bit about how we want to engage the community, where we want to engage the community, and what kinds of things we're looking to achieve through that engagement. And for folks that are not familiar with the comp plan, and I think everybody here is pretty familiar, the comp plan is a document that gets essentially written and rewritten. It's kind of a once every 25 years with a bunch of refreshing. And so when you go back and you look at the comp plan, the core comp plan, there was one that was drafted in 2000 that looked ahead to a lot of targets and outcomes in 2025. We're now in the process of updating that comp plan in 2025 for looking ahead to 2050. And it's a chance for the city to do, a couple of things. One is to look ahead to what they're projecting the population to be, the job market to be, the transportation needs to be, and essentially saying, what is this city going to look like as we go forward into the next 25 years? It's also a chance for them to layer on policy priorities where they say, we're trying to move over the next 25 years, the city in this direction or in that direction. And then those two things become essentially the framework for discussions around key investments that the city would make, key investments that the city might encourage on behalf of private enterprise. And so it's a chance for kind of the city to kind of take a step back, look out 25 years and ask, where are we, where do we think we're going to be? Where do we want to go? And what do we need to do in order to make sure that we get there? Um, the Office of Planning formally kicked off their Comp Plan 2050 rewrite sometime around February, March of this year. It was a bit of a slow start. Frank Chauvin and I went to the mayor's actual kickoff. I went to another community engagement event that was over on Capitol Hill. And a lot of it at this point has been very kind of foundation laying. And so it's not the kind of thing that the engagements that have happened with the public to date have been really in-depth, specific neighborhood or community focused. And there has not yet been a real formal opportunity to weigh in and say, hey, these are the things that we really want to make sure are prioritized in the plan, and that these are things that we want to make sure are not lost sight of in that plan either. What the Office of Planning had essentially said is that they are planning essentially to go through a very intensive process starting around now, August, September of 2025, that they are looking to have a draft document that they can start to shop around and share going into the fall of 2026. That as we get into the fall of 2027, that would become a very formalized document that would be getting formal ANC and council feedback. And then they would be looking in 2028, early 2028, to have that plan approved. And so on one hand, it seems like, gosh, there's a whole bunch of time over the coming years to be able to weigh in on this. But the reality is that the Office of Planning tends to set down their framework earlier in the process, and they tend to kind of, lock in certain pieces that they then spend time testing as opposed to, revising. And so now is a good time for us to, get their attention and to invite them into conversations, talk about how we can collaborate with them, talk about how we want to engage beyond them. And so one thought that I had, and I'm happy to pull up the document so that the community can see it. I'm also happy to share it with any community members who might want to get a copy of it. But the mid-city plan is kind of the broad area. It is larger than just 1B. It includes most of Ward 1. And the Mid-City element is essentially the Office of Planning's chapter on our neighborhood for the purposes of planning. And, it's rough organization as I've gone through it, a few times. Karen, you probably have memorized big sections of it. There's a bunch of data that lays out, here's what we're looking at in terms of demographics. Here's the trends that we expected to see. And this is a lot of what we're basing our planning discussions on. One thought that I had, and I'll put it out there and we'll come back and discuss, is do we want to invite Office of Planning to come and share with us not necessarily their plans, but their updated data, right? So when you kind of looked at where you were in 2020 and you projected forward to 2025, how accurate was that? Not kind of pressuring whether they were right or wrong, but just kind of asking the question, if you projected to go from here to there, how close did you get to that? Asking them as well to tell us where they are looking at or what projections they're looking at between 2025 and 2050. And essentially the goal there would be for us to begin to have essentially the same base of or baseline of data that OP has as they are doing their planning discussions, so that we are kind of thinking about same or similar things. So that's kind of one big element of the comp plan, is looking at different kind of demographic data and projections going forward. There's a really good element in the comp plan that talks about very specific things that they heard from the community. So very specific asks that the community said, "Hey, please pay attention to this." Displacement is one of the priorities that we have talked about as a committee, and displacement is one of the elements that the community communicated to the Office of Planning in the last comp plan rewrite. It would be good to look at some of those asks of the community, and to say, are these things that are still relevant? Is this something that we, not reinvent the wheel, but are these things still relevant? Are they still priorities? Are these things that we need to go out and pressure test with the community to determine how relevant they are? Are there other new items in the same vein as those community requests or recommendations that we want to make sure we capture and communicate on? And then a third big piece that kind of captured my mind, and I will kind of round out my summary with, is there were a number of very specific recommendations that the comp plan makes in terms of focus areas for action, things that they wanted to accomplish over the comp plan period. And it may be worth pausing on those to ask, how many of these things were accomplished? What impact did they have? Are these things that essentially are done and we don't need to focus on going forward? Are these things that are good progress and we need to continue to focus on them as recommendations for the next 25 years? But I think that framework of the mid-city element of the comp plan is not a bad jumping off point for our thinking about what we would be asking for from OP in terms of data and information, what we may want to take out to the community for pressure testing, and where we may want to judge. Again, I hate to use the word success or failure, but the success or failure of the comp plan as it was presented, many years ago. How far down that path did we get, and how well, or perhaps how not well, did all of that serve this community that we're all a part of? So that's where I wanted to turn, was just to kind of say, from an overall timeline perspective, I think we've got a good 4 to 6 months to really engage OP, to engage the community, to firm up some of the insights and recommendations that we would want to make, and have them incorporated into the comp planning process. We've got a framework that already exists. We don't have to follow it, but it gives us kind of a launching point to kind of think about how we might want to take these conversations forward, and what information we'd want to be asking for sooner rather than later, so that we're working from a shared base of fact. And I'll kind of put it there and turn it to the committee to get your thoughts on, what are things that are of priority to you? What are things that you would want to learn more about? What are things that you would want to make sure we did during this engagement process, so that we're getting the right voices to the table? And community members would love to get your comments and questions as well. We'll go to the committee members first, and then we'll go to community to weigh in. Krishna.
So just to be clear, though, I mean, this is just really a brainstorming session.
Yep.
We're not going to be passing a resolution or anything
Nope.
tonight. Okay.
Yeah, this is one of those, I feel like, rare working sessions where it's more of a uh we didn't, for a couple of different reasons, have a lot on the agenda tonight. Some of the things that I was thinking we were going to have on the agenda, things were just moving much more slowly. This is a timely topic and it's a good pivot point. And so, yeah, Krishna, this is really more of a kind of a brainstorming discussion. And I've kind of thrown out my idea, right? If you guys left it to me by myself, I would say I want to get the following data updated and renewed from OP, right? Here's all the stuff that was in your mid-city plan, or your mid-city element plan. I'd like to get the same data updated and the projections going forward. I'd want to circulate the recommendations, and I'd want to get feedback on them in terms of highly relevant, need to make sure we incorporate this, less relevant, and then kind of a survey of what are other recommendations in this same vein that we want to get picked up. And the third would be a little bit of scoring around things that the mid-city plan had recommended, to say, hey, we still want to push hard on this, where this is not something we want to push on anymore. but essentially use that as a jumping off point. But I'm one voice in this, and I'm also new, right? Most of you all have been part of the Economic Development Committee for longer than I, and so I'd love to kind of benefit from your wisdom and experience as we go forward, with this updated process.
I would, can I go? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, I agree it's important to look at the previous plan and see what has been realized and what hasn't. I'm a little afraid of getting bogged down in um, negativity, like blaming people, blaming institutions for not fulfilling those goals, because there's lots of reasons why things don't happen that are beyond any people's control. On the other hand, it is important to look, to see what was asked for or expected and how that turned out, and see what we want to continue working on. The other thing I want to mention is, of course, we are the ANC. We're focused on the interests and needs of people in this neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
but our neighborhood plays an important role in the entire city.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to lose track uh, of our status and the impact and importance that our neighborhood has in the city as a whole, and the mid city area as well. So I just don't want to get too parochial in our planning. So I want to, when we involve the community, I want to encourage them to think both hyper locally and broadly. Maybe go back and forth in the discussion so that we cover both those levels of analysis.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Both excellent points, and maybe I think that provides some guidance around how we approach a review of things that have gotten done versus those that haven't. And the focus would not be on why is this still not done. It would be is it still a priority to do? And if that's it, then let's make sure it makes its way into the next comp plan as a focus and that we don't lose sight of it. It is actually really interesting to look at the map. If anybody is interested, I can pull it up. There's a great aerial photo, that's on the cover of the Duke plan. And you look at it, and there is so much grassland, undeveloped grassland, in the U Street corridor around 2000. And I took a minute just to highlight, because, Krishna, I can't help but create a PowerPoint. I took a minute to highlight each of the developments that had gone up, and there's like 13 to 15 like major developments just on this side of the U Street corridor. And by this side, I mean the kind of the Shaw Howard metro area, kind of Ninth Street over to 7th Street. And yeah, there's a bunch of things that still haven't gotten done, but there's a ton of things that went up. And so on one hand, I look at it and I say, great, space that was unused and unusable before is now turned into residential and retail. That's great. But at the same time, it's worth pausing and asking the question, did all of that new residential and retail accomplish the kind of spectrum of goals that were laid out, right? I mean, did we create, at the same time that we created market rate housing, did we create housing that was affordable? At the same time that we created new retail space, did we actually see a flourishing of businesses along the U Street corridor? And if the answer is, well, no, we built it and we had some good successes, but we didn't get all the way, that might be worth, right? Talking about as we think about additional recommendations that we would want to make, in this comp plan, things that we wanted to make sure that we paid attention to, because this development is likely, after a brief pause, going to continue to go forward over the next 25 years as the city grows.
So when I was in law school, I had to take this class on state and local taxation, which is probably the most boring topic you could ever do. But this was my sick goal, that I was going to become a tax attorney before I had a moment of realization that I didn't want to be a complete loser and make $700,000 a year and live in Paris like my friends who are tax attorneys now do. But the professor, who was this wacky guy from South Carolina and really spoke like a New York Yankee. I mean, he was like 300 words a minute. I mean, his shtick was, it was a 4 hour class once a week, and you just had to sit around and read state and local taxation codes. And it was incredibly painful, but I have to say it was probably the most meaningful learning experience I've ever had in my life. So in that spirit, I just wanted to quickly summarize what I saw in the comp plan that was talking about our area in terms of specific recommendations. And this is, let me just try to get, this is page, I think, 24. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Starting
it's just
around page
of the mid city.
of the mid city. On page 22, it starts talking about U Street Uptown, which is where we are. It goes into a great deal of background, and then here's some specific policies that it wants to talk about. And I'm just going to, I won't read them for you, but I'll just quickly summarize. Uptown Destination District encourages redevelopment of U Street between 6th and 12th and Georgia between 7th and Rhode Island as a mixed use area. Kind of done. Uptown sub areas create a distinct and memorable identity for different sub areas in the Uptown district based on existing assets such as Lincoln Theater, Howard Theater, the African American Civil War Memorial, and Howard Theater. Don't think that's really happened. Uptown design considerations ensure that development in the Uptown area is designed to make the most of the proximity of the Metro Center as at Shaw and 13th and respect the integrity of historic resources and transition as seamlessly as possible. I think that that's maybe a 50% that we're there. Policy 2.34, cultural tourism. Promote cultural tourism initiatives, art, signage, other things that recognize the African American historical and cultural heritage of the Uptown area. Again, I think there's been some efforts there, has not really been quite as thorough as it could have been. Parking and traffic management, encourage development of shared parking facilities. I think that's a 0. Small business retention, incorporate small business retention assistance programs in the Uptown District revitalization. Again, I would say that's pretty close to a 0. And implement the Duke plan to develop key vacant and existing historic sites. Again, in that respect, I'd say I'd give it maybe a B. We've developed a bunch of those sites, but it's certainly not a perfect one. And implement the recommendations of the multimodal and parking study to provide improved parking management, traffic safety, transit, pedestrian. I mean, I think there's been a lot done there since 2000, but obviously more could be done. So I would have to say that's probably, again, I'd give it a B.
Yeah, I mean, and Karen, I see your hand up, and Howard right after her. But Christian, that's almost where my head was going, right? Which was to say, if we looked at these different initiatives and we basically scored it in terms of how kind of far done or how well done it is, to kind of say, okay, good, that's done. We don't really have to put energy into it, and then scored it in terms of how important it still is. It might kind of give us a sense of the new priorities that we wanted to be championing and testing with the community.
Yeah.
But I think there's some good stuff there. Karen, go ahead.
I am, and actually, that's been the benchmarks that, I try to bring those particular benchmarks up each time we have a conversation in this committee. And then also, in conjunction with that, I think that we really need to look at where the budget is for DC, especially considering that we have $1 billion that has been hijacked from the city, and we're trying to do everything we can to get it back. I the economic development of the city and bringing new businesses forward, people who want to work with the city in this contentious time, and we're trying to plan 25 years ahead, is something that I'm so glad that we're very optimistic to do. Um, and then also looking at the hearings that we had today, it's like, okay, what are we really going to actually see come into fruition? So I'm always going to be optimistic, especially about Washington D.C. because we've been here for such a long time. I just want to see what type of budgeting that we can talk about with DIMPAD if we bring them to the table and we want to have a discussion about the comp plan and whether or not they think that the things that were on the comp plan before are still feasible. So those are the things that I really want to see, as well as I don't know if you got a chance to bring up the document that what we're doing, and if you can correlate the comp plan with the committee's goals and interests that we came up with last year, and then bring forward the new stuff. That's what I'm really interested in seeing as well. Thank you.
Great. Howard, go ahead.
Yeah, in addition to looking at the previous plan and where we are, how far we've come with that, I think we need to consider how the world has changed in 25 years, particularly with technology. So we have electric cars, so there's needs for charging stations. AI, there will be, in the next 25 years, there will be robots walking on the streets along with us. I'm not sure what they're going to be doing, but they will be doing things. And how will we accommodate things like that? So I think some futuristic thinking is going to be required. And then other changes. There's a huge compared, I think, to 25 years ago, many, many more people, residents here, have pets, have dogs. We've already dealt with the dog park issue. How I just did a search through the previous plan. Nothing was mentioned about that, about pets and companion animals. Very likely there will be an older population. I'm sure there will be studies that the planning department can refer to on that. How are we going to handle a somewhat older population in this area? So I don't want us to get, quote unquote, bogged down with the previous plan. And let's think about how the world is going to change rapidly and in major ways over the next 25 years.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. In fact, Howard, I think you already know this, that there is a DDOT pilot for robots delivering food to Howard University. I am still keeping an eye out for them. They're like giant coolers on wheels that zip through the neighborhood. But I haven't seen them yet, but it's kind of like, it's exciting to think about.
And Amazon wants to deliver packages with drones. I don't know how that's going to work, but that's going to come up again, I'm sure. So
Yeah, it totally is. Let's see. Karen, I was able to pull this up. Let's just take a quick look as a committee. Let me make sure you guys can all see this. Can everyone see this? This is the Economic Development Committee meeting minutes from December 18th of 2024 to members of the community. Most folks, not including myself, were on this committee last year. And so they put a lot of energy into making sure that the kind of the media agenda items were captured and that they were kind of carried forward. So this is kind of section number 2, which is known business. So the first item was the Neighborhood Management Authority discussion, and that was the very first thing that we engaged in as a committee, was around the NMA. Source Theater. Give me a second. Yeah. Okay, great. Yep. So NMA. The second item was the Source Theater. And Krishna, I know you put a lot. I'm heartbroken actually over this one, because this is an arts and entertainment district, and we have so few arts and entertainment venues anymore. But I know, Krishna, you had spent some time on this. I don't know if it's worth revisiting, because I think you've already given us an update, but that was the second big item. To one of the things that we talked about today, the clean team and Main Streets, that continues to be a priority, and that's something that we're inviting them back or inviting them to present in October.
Matt, honestly, I think Karen was referring to a different document. In all
Okay.
honesty, this is my recollection, because I do remember we had gone through this exercise where we tried to lay this out.
It's this document, Krishna. It
It was this one?
Yes, this one we actually we finalized everything. We went through the whole process, the action plan process, but I thought this was supposed to be the final
Okay.
That's what I was referring to. He brought up the right one.
Okay, my bad.
And then I took it down, but the last item was the dog park, which I think we now refer to as 625 T Street. and that one is been funded by the council member. I am working with her office to have a essentially a ribbon cutting of sorts. It's not really going to be a ribbon cutting. It's going to be a handoff to DPR to say, hey, let's get going on the planning of this park in October. And so now that they're back from recess and the September 17th meeting is a day behind us, we're going to start working on planning with DPR leadership and the council member. But she actually allocated a substantial sum of money to have that park renovated. And part of the reason for the substantiality of the sum is that apparently it used to be a car lot, a used car lot, and there was concern about additional costs associated with remediation. So I think, Karen, we've as a group held pretty true to that list of priorities and have continued to tick through them. And I think that's in large credit to the group last year laying these items out as priorities.
Yeah.
Um,
I think so too, and I always like before going to a new list, I always like to review what we've done. And as Krishna was mentioning, we used an action plan on how to come up with these ideas so that one, that we know that we're achieving our goals as opposed to talking in circles. And I think we did a really great job with doing that. And but I don't like moving forward in as you mentioned, and I think Howard mentioned, if there's a lot of things that are no longer really conducive to the neighborhood, I think that we should move past those and move forward. Maybe not the Amazon drones, Howard, but at least we should we should come up with some fresh, innovative ideas that would allow the community to show that we're being collaborative with businesses as well as residents. And you mentioned earlier bringing in more community engagement because there's an established community engagement committee um, with the ANC to make sure that we're doing things for the community the way the community wants things done. So, but that's pretty much it. I just didn't want us to move forward without reviewing what we've done. Thank you.
no, it shows good discipline, Karen. I appreciate that. So let's do this. I think I'll be honest and say that one of my goals was to wrap up by 8 because we haven't had a short meeting in a long time. Why don't we do this? I like where this discussion's gone, and I like how kind of folks have put kind of concerns and recommendations forward.
Except
Um,
the drones, except the
except for
drones.
the drones, but we'll get to that. Um, I mean, we might have people like having their dogs walked with drones, Howard. I mean, get both things done at the same time. David Martin and I had met some time ago, and we just haven't had a chance to kind of put this at the top of our list. But David Martin and I talked about the kind of him getting more involved in data around the comp plan. So we'll pull up offline and kind of start working with OP to get a new foundation of data. Teresa Edmondson, who I see in the audience, is at Howard University, has identified a young student who is very interested in doing an internship with our committee, focused on the comp plan, and she is very interested in the policy of cities and the growth and development of cities and the balance that cities need to maintain as they evolve over time. And so we'll have her be a part of this effort. But I think what we'll do is this. I will lay out a rough sketch of kind of an approach that we could take, send it around to folks for some feedback. We will reach out to OP and invite them to come in and give us an update on the data. We may do kind of an off the books review as a committee of just kind of those recommendations for our area and say, let's kind of, see if we can prioritize them. But then I think those recommendations and kind of this futurism and the more kind of bigger role of U Street in the area discussion is where we would start our conversation with the public engagement work and start to pressure test some of these recommendations and some of these trends that we see as emerging. Krishna, go ahead.
Yeah, could we maybe just, I know you want to finish this up, and I actually very much respect that, but here from the audience, I see Scott Pomeroy is in the attendee list. I'd love to just get his perspectives on this. And I think Jean, of course, is there as well. If either of them are out, I'd love to just hear from someone outside the committee since they've been suffering with us for the last hour.
And for years, honestly.
Yeah.
Scott and or Gene, if you guys want to make a comment, please put your hand up. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we would love to hear from you.
Or anyone else there.
All right, Gene, allowed to talk. All right, Gene.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, earlier I was in an Uber and trying to listen to the meeting, so I kind of missed the first 10 minutes or was kind of in and out. But I think you were talking about a committee to talk about the 2025 plan. Am I wrong about that?
Yes. Well, it's not so much a committee as much as it's community engagement, and getting input from the business community, residential community, on kind of the comp plan, the future direction of the corridor for the next, 20, 25 years.
Well, yeah, I'd sure like to participate in that. But I don't know how futuristic I am. But I had a laugh about the robots, but you're right, you know. I mean, and yeah, they're already happening supposedly on Howard's campus. So I would be like you were saying, I'd be interested in what's going on with that and how that's working. But we will have to think of ways to accommodate it. You know, if you think about all the bike lane conversations, now we're gonna have robot lane conversations. So more parking's gonna go away. So I don't know, but we do need to think futuristically, and I would like to be a part of that conversation. Definitely.
Great. Scott Pomeroy commented in the Q&A that he's driving. So I think that was him subtly saying that he'll comment next time, but not now. Good. And then Teresa, I don't know if there's anything you wanna share from a Howard perspective, and or the future of your students, building robots on campus and sending them out into the world. Okay. I think there's a lot here. I mean, to Gene's point about being in an Uber and also thinking about where things are going. I mean, I will say that when I moved to this part of the city, I was looking over here to begin with because of Uber. I had a travel job from 2003 until I moved here in 13, and um, in 2003 through probably 10. I had to live near a place where there were lots of taxi cabs driving by because that was the only way I could catch an early taxi to the airport to fly out.
Yeah.
And as soon as Uber became a thing, it opened up like the whole city in terms of where I could potentially live. And so I think there are, like Howard, to your point, there are trends that are going to be that have emerged, that will be emerging, that are going to change the way that people think about where they live and how they live and maybe even what they live in. So I think there is some pretty exciting work, and it sounds like we've got a willing and enthusiastic partner in Gene Hamza, and I know there's going to be others that want to be part of this too.
I think also, I'd like to say that I think a part of the conversation too, as we're looking forward, are thinking about some of the amenities that we've lost over the last, I mean, some amenities we haven't had in decades, but, um, you know, Karen brought up a nail salon, or whether it's a barbershop or a nail salon, or I am a real big advocate of a music store, a full service music store. But these are all things, the amenities that we don't have in our day-to-day lives that we would like to have. I mean, I would like a bowling alley, but I'm not going to push for a bowling alley. I'm being facetious, but yeah, I mean the things besides the CVS that we have to leave our community to go and do. So I think that's an important focus for the next 25 years.
Yep. Great
Was
point.
it was a hair salon, Jean, by the way, and
Sorry.
yeah, but one of the things that I did bring forward a while ago is because of parking. I really have been trying to get us to get an actual dedicated parking garage especially since we constantly talk about parking and it's needed. And it's also a premium business model that would allow someone who really wants to make a lot of money invest in this area. And and we have a lot of empty structures or areas that could be create a parking garage can actually be created in those areas. And I'm still just dumbfounded as to why that hasn't been done. And I've been speaking on that for quite some time. And then also I really want us to see some family oriented fun areas around here. um Skating, I brought forward skating as an option a few years back, when Howard was trying to develop the reverb. I said, but then they opened up skating rinks in other areas of the city, that because it's a very popular activity. And as far as innovation goes, people really hated the lime scooters and stuff, but that's a part of transportation now. So we do have to understand that when we look at the future of the city, we want to talk about aging in place, but we do want to talk about people who are looking at different. We have our entire we have a university, we have school, we have people that's going to all the elementary to high school. Our young people, what is it that they're interested in doing, because they're the future of our city as well. And we need to get their input as to what's driving their interest, because anyone who studies business will know that it's a supply and demand. And you can't keep having the same old thing without it becoming drivel if people are no longer interested. So I really want us to try to be innovative in our thinking, and also to think future for who we do have in the area and the aging in place, as Howard mentioned. But I always like to mention that because from a public safety perspective, we need to be concerned about a lot of our seniors as well. So thank you.
Yep, great.
I would add another technology, which is self-driving cars, which is going to have all sorts of effects on how and whether people use public transportation. You can park your self-driving car 10 blocks away, just call it and it'll come and get you. It changes the dynamics of all sorts of things, and I think that needs to be thought through as well.
Yep. I mean, you might even get to a point where the self-driving car isn't yours. It's just you get in and out of it and it goes on to the next pickup. Good. All right. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff here. Let me put some thought both into the framework of how we want to kind of evaluate and the framework for how we want to engage. I'll send it around. We'll start getting a group together outside of this meeting. I think we'll probably do one or two kind of larger discussions, hopefully in person, so that we can get the community together, talk about this, and more to come. And then we'll have the Main Streets and Clean teams come in October. We'll try to get OP to come and share some of the data with us in October. But I think we'll have a pretty robust agenda coming up.
Okay.
All right, everybody. 8:06, our earliest meeting yet for the year. Thank you all so much. Good luck with the rest of your week, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Thank you, sir.
Good
Have a good
night.
night.
Have a nice night.